A dangerous game of hide-and-seek is currently underway in Vovchansk, in a city where at least 80% of the buildings have been destroyed by shelling. Russia's forces have resorted to hiding deep underground to escape Ukrainian counterattacks. The Russians are hiding as they attempt to advance. However, Ukraine has devised a tactic to halt them in their tracks. Russian troops thought they were untouchable underground. They were dead wrong, literally. Ukraine is flushing Russia's soldiers out of their hidey holes with mines, displaying a brutal new tactic that may ruin Russia's Vovchansk ambitions. To understand why Ukraine is using this new tactic, it's important to learn more about the situation in Vovchansk. Of the many cities that Putin's forces have targeted in Ukraine, Vovchansk may offer one of the worst examples of what Russia's artillery can do. Barely a building is left standing in the city, forcing soldiers fighting on the ground to pick their way through rubble while hoping that shattered brickwork will be enough to provide them with cover in a warped version of urban warfare. Russia has little interest in fighting within the shelled-out remains of a once proud Ukrainian city. Instead, it's using a network of tunnels and sewers deep below Vovchansk to make advances. As Euromaidan Press put it in a September 14 report on Ukraine's new mine-based tactic, the conditions faced by Ukrainian infantry in Vovchansk go beyond human endurance. Enemy positions are just meters away, above ground, no buildings remain intact, and beneath the layers of concrete and asphalt, the occupiers' fortifications and tunnels lie hidden. And the reality for those Ukrainian soldiers is that Russia's use of Vovchansk tunnels is far from a new phenomenon. In October 2024, the New Voice of Ukraine reported that Russian soldiers in Vovchansk had started using a tactic that Ukraine had seen across the front from at least 2023. Rather than take on Ukraine soldiers above ground, Russia's troops had started to dig tunnels and build underground passageways throughout Vovchansk. Using these tunnels, Russia can create logistical arteries running through the city, keeping its soldiers fortified above ground, well supplied. Plus, the New Voice of Ukraine adds, those tunnels can also allow Russia's soldiers to bear down on Ukraine's defensive positions, without Ukraine even knowing that the Russians are coming. Ukrainian military spokesperson Vladimir Detonating highlighted the challenges that Russia's approach was creating for Ukraine. It's more applicable to urban and suburban combat rather than forest areas. Indeed, it must be noted that they know how to dig. We can see from our offensive actions just how difficult it is to flush the enemy out of their burrows, Detonating said. And we still have to use the strength of our people, the infantry, to flush them out of these burrows. That last statement is an important point. Ukraine's utilization of drones throughout its war with Russia is a huge part of why it's been able to defend itself for so long. Right now, drones are responsible for about 70% of the casualties being experienced by both sides, the New York Times reports. Of course, an enemy being underground makes aerial drones practically useless. Ukraine's operators can't fire on or launch kamikaze assaults against Russian soldiers that they can't see, which is a fact that Russia's troops in Vovchansk have been using to their advantage for almost a year. By March 2025, Russia's tunnel-based strategy was becoming clearer. That month saw Defense Express share comments from an unnamed service member from Ukraine's 34th Separate Motorized Infantry Battalion. Speaking to a Ukrainian media outlet named Suspilne News, the service member said, "The enemy has shifted to underground operations. They're digging tunnels between buildings where they've established firing positions. They're also trying to get close as possible to our infantry to suddenly and quickly launch active offensive actions." Adding to this problem is that Russia's Vovchansk occupiers have also taken to building makeshift drones of their own, which Defense Express says are rough copies of the vampire drones Ukraine deploys in the city. Though it isn't outright stated by Defense Express, it seems likely that Russia is at the very least transporting these drones using the Vovchansk tunnels. It's also possible that its operators are deploying the drones from the tunnels, again making it very difficult for Ukraine to counter their operations. By July 2025, even more information was coming out about how Russia has been using the Vovchansk tunnels. This time, It was Meza sharing comments made by a man named Alexander Danilenko, who, it says, is the head of the media liaison group that represents Ukraine's Heart Brigade. In Vovchansk, the entire city has been leveled to the ground, Danilenko says. To find any shelter there, you have to rely on the sewage and underground communications, and this is practically the only option for gathering and hiding there. The Russians use these communications to concentrate personnel, stockpile ammunition and food, and then launch assaults from there. There is no getting around the fact that Russia's soldiers are operating intelligently in Vovchansk. In addition to the heavy assaults to wear down Ukraine's defenses, Russia has built a network of tunnels, sometimes leading into pre-existing sewers, that allows it to build stockpiles, transport equipment, and move troops around, all outside of the grasp of Ukraine's defenders. At least, that's been the case for most of the time that Russia has been attempting to take Vovchansk. But not anymore. As Russia's soldiers hide away in their underground lairs, just waiting for an opportunity to strike, Ukraine has been coming up with a solution to the tunnel problem. Specifically, members of Ukraine's 34th Motorized Infantry Battalion, who are known by the terrifying moniker of Wolfhounds, have devised an ingenious strategy that they're using to flush out Russian tunnels while dealing death to occupiers who've managed to avoid Ukraine's drones. Wolfhound soldiers are manually carrying anti-tank mines to the tunnel entrances they find. But instead of lacing those entrances with mines, making it dangerous for Russian soldiers to emerge, Euromaidan Press says the soldiers are doing something that's far more dangerous. The Wolfhounds are activating the mines and throwing them into the tunnel openings, causing explosions that rock Russia's makeshift tunnels as they kill any soldiers unfortunate enough to get caught in the blasts. And this isn't just conjecture. There are no tall tales of military exploits that never happened here. Thanks to Euromaidan Press, there's footage of the Wolfhounds executing their brutal new tactic. In a video shared on the outlet's X account, it can be precisely seen what the Wolfhounds have been doing to Russia's underground soldiers. The footage begins with a shot of a hole amidst the rubble of Vovchansk. Within seconds, a pair of Ukraine soldiers approaches the hole. One offers cover as the two soldiers examine the hole, perhaps waiting for Russia's troops to emerge. When nobody comes out, the footage shows the second soldier lift a massive anti-tank mine and throw it into the hole, after which both soldiers run back to cover as their colleagues, who are off camera, fire on the hole to prevent any Russian soldiers from emerging. Then there's a lull. A few seconds later, after the camera switches to capture the hole from a different angle, the mine is finally triggered. A massive explosion fills the screen, which precedes more footage of the Wolfhounds pulling the same trick several times over. Holes are found, mines are thrown in, explosions rock the Russian tunnels. Ukraine soldiers are also seen using the same technique to hit Russian soldiers hiding in the remains of some of the few buildings still half standing in Vovchansk. Now, it's unclear from this footage exactly how these anti-tank mines are being triggered. As the name implies, these mines are built to detonate when heavy vehicles drive over them, so a person stepping on them shouldn't be enough to trigger them. Yet it can and has happened many times that a person triggers an anti-tank mine. However, Ukraine won't want to take the risk on a maybe situation when it comes to their mines exploding. It's also clear that the mines aren't detonating when they land after being dropped down a hole. If they did that, the Wolfhound soldiers throwing the mines would get caught in the blast. Is there some kind of remote detonator involved? A device that allows Ukraine soldiers to manually drop their anti-tank mines and escape to cover before detonating the mines from a distance. Euromaidan Press doesn't say, though it seems likely that something like a remote-controlled detonator is in play, if only to make the new Wolfhound tactic viable. Plus, remote detonation makes it nearly impossible for Russia's soldiers to deactivate the mine before it explodes. So what's apparent here is a new technique that Ukraine can use to potentially collapse the tunnels that are built under Vovchansk, filling in their exits and entrances in the process. And though no Russian deaths have been confirmed yet, there is a possibility that soldiers are getting caught in these blasts, or failing that, are getting trapped in their tunnels by debris. This is a death-defying strategy. and the footage reveals that the Wolfhounds have honed their collective technique to a T. That shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody who's heard about the exploits of this battalion. It's fair to say that the Wolfhounds are among the main reasons why Russia hasn't been able to take Vovchansk yet. Their defense of the remains of a city that may never be returned to its former beauty has been both brutal and effective. For example, Ukraine Today published an article in May where it revealed that the Wolfhounds had eradicated over 500 Russian soldiers during the first 4 months of 2025, all of them in Vovchansk. Most of those soldiers are those who are unfortunate enough to have been moved out of the tunnels so they can take part in the meat assaults that Putin is so fond of. Earlier in this video, it was noted that Russia's underground tunnels were a smart strategy because they allow Putin's forces to avoid charging headlong into Ukraine's defenders. That assumption no longer holds. It appears that, even with the tunnels in play, the Wolfhounds are having to fend off plenty of Russia's meat assaults. That's revealed to Ukraine Today by a commander in the Wolfhound Battalion, who the outlet refers to as Fartovi. He says that the repetition of Russia's meat assaults often undoes any intelligent strategy that Vovchansk's underground tunnels would enable. I think this is their deliberate tactic, the commander says. For example, there are 3 fighters sitting at our position. They make runs. The first one is dead, the second one is dead, and they continue like this, counting on the fact that some Katsap will still reach and jump in. There is still some shooting, throwing grenades. The fighters themselves are getting exhausted. The Wolfhounds' official X account is also a treasure trove of information concerning what the battalion does to protect the remains of Vovchansk. One video, shared in August, reveals that the battalion has found ways to use drones to destroy the entrances to Russia's underground tunnels in much the same way that it's using mines. These drones may not deliver the same level of explosive force, but they are effective when there are cracks and holes for them to fly into. The Wolfhounds are also one of many Ukrainian battalions that have revealed how Putin is relying on foreign soldiers for his invasion. In July, the battalion revealed that it captured a Chinese mercenary fighting in the ruins of Vovchansk. That mercenary, who the Wolfhounds claim has 2 children and a pregnant wife waiting for him back home, was fighting for Putin's money before he was taken into custody. This battalion is dangerous, innovative, and if the fact that its soldiers are now throwing anti-tank mines into Russian hidey holes is anything to go by, its members are fearless defenders who'll do whatever it takes to make sure that occupying Russian forces pay for what they've done to Vovchansk. All of this leads back to Vovchansk and the reason why Russia's soldiers are being pushed to take the city, even as the Wolfhounds deliver death and destruction in ever more innovative ways. Putin wants this city because claiming it would open up possibilities elsewhere. Vovchansk is in the Kharkiv region, which itself has been contested from the very day that Putin launched his Ukraine invasion. Specifically, Vovchansk is in the potential direction of advancement that would allow Russia to start launching more intense assaults on Kupiansk. Ultimately, Vovchansk is a stepping stone for Russia, a city that it needs to take if it's going to be able to take more of Kharkiv. Russia has gone to great lengths to attempt to take Vovchansk. In May 2024, RBC Ukraine wrote about an Institute for the Study of War report that revealed that Russia has demolished bridges in the Vovchansk area. The goal here is to prevent Ukraine from sending reinforcements into Vovchansk. It's all about isolation. Only Russia didn't realize that the Wolfhounds already in Vovchansk would put up such a fierce fight. The same outlet also notes that, though Vovchansk may not contribute too much to the Russian advance in Kharkiv, it could at least allow Russia to attack a settlement named Eliki Burluk. Again, it's all about stepping stones. Vovchansk itself may not hold massive strategic importance. However, the regions Russia might be able to reach if it claims the city do. Ukraine can't cede Vovchansk. If it does, it'll open the door to Russian assaults on more strategically important settlements in Kharkiv. Vovchansk also holds a sort of symbolic importance for Ukraine, as its defense of the city has allowed it to slow Russia's momentum in Kharkiv. Novaya Gazeta explains, stating in May 2024 that Russia had enjoyed some success in Kharkiv until Vovchansk became a brick wall. It quoted the head of the Kyiv Center for Military Legal Studies, Alexander Musyenko, who said that Russia's soldiers had become giddy with success after capturing several smaller settlements in the direction of Vovchansk. However, a powerful Ukrainian resistance, led by the Wolfhounds, had dashed Russia's hopes of a rapid offensive, forcing them to stop their advance near Vovchansk, the outlet says. Vovchansk, despite having been razed to the ground, has almost become a symbol of hope for Ukraine. After all, if Russia can be held up in the ruins of a city that should have been overrun by now, even with its network of underground tunnels, that means Ukraine can cause serious damage elsewhere in the future. The longer Vovchansk is held, the more Russian soldiers die, and the longer Kharkiv stays out of Russia's hands. And speaking of Kharkiv, anything that Ukraine soldiers can do in Vovchansk, including throwing anti-tank mines into Russian tunnels, contributes to the defense of that region. And, like Vovchansk itself, there are plenty of reasons why Russia wants to take Kharkiv. There's the symbolic aspect, for a start. In May 2024, DW explained that Kharkiv is one of the most important cities in the Ukraine war, not just for its potential strategic uses, but because the loss of the city that shares the region's name would deal a major symbolic blow to Ukraine. Kharkiv was the home of many Ukrainian writers and poets who were part of a movement that became known as the Executed Renaissance, who contributed great literary works even as they were persecuted by former Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Also, during the Soviet era, Kharkiv became one of Ukraine's most important hubs for industry, transport and science, DW says. The Kharkiv Aviation Institute was the first educational facility of its kind in Ukraine, and the city is home to several national universities in the fields of law and radio electronics. Simply put, Kharkiv is a very important city to Ukraine. It's where early seeds of rebellion were planted against the former Soviet Union, as well as a place where some of the most intelligent minds in Ukrainian history were formed. Allowing Russia to take the city, which is tantamount to taking the Kharkiv Oblast, could potentially ruin all of this history. To many in Ukraine, Kharkiv must be protected to preserve its legacy, as well as to deny Russia the region's strategic importance. On the strategic level, Russia wants Kharkiv because of its status as a border region. In May 2024, The Guardian revealed that Putin said 2 months prior that the establishment of a buffer zone in Kharkiv was needed to protect Russia from cross-border incursions. Russia would later suffer one of those incursions, though it came from the Sumy Oblast into the Kursk region. Still, that only reinforces Putin's point. Kursk represented a massive humiliation for Russia, not least because Ukraine taking territory in that region represented the first time an invading force had taken any part of the Russian Federation since World War II. Turning Kharkiv into a border region prevents any chance of Ukraine launching a similar counter-invasion from that direction. Sure, Russia could also use Kharkiv, along with Vovchansk, to launch assaults in other directions once they're captured. But it's the protection of the motherland that is Putin's main objective with Kharkiv, and Ukraine is doing everything that it can to prevent Russia from creating the buffer zone that it so desperately wants. Vovchansk would play a vital role in the creation of such a buffer zone, The Guardian says. If Russia secures positions in Vovchansk and Lipsy, where residents have already fled in evacuation vans after coming under sustained artillery and drone attack, it will have a solid platform for artillery attacks on the city of Kharkiv, the outlet claims. Kharkiv has to stay in Ukraine's hands, at least to the point where Russia can't claim the region completely. Vovchansk is key to Ukraine's strategy, which leads right back to members of the Wolfhound battalion delivering anti-tank mines to Russian tunnels by hand. This tactic is death-defying, some might even say foolhardy, but as the footage demonstrates, it's a tactic that has worked time and time again. And if one were to ask a member of the Wolfhound battalion if what they're doing is worth it to protect Vovchansk, the odds are that they would say yes, even if it means manually dropping mines that pack a terrifying explosive force into tunnels. Ukraine's defenders will do whatever it takes to stop Russia from taking Vovchansk. Now, Russia's failure to advance in Vovchansk has been mirrored elsewhere in Ukraine over the last few months. In May, Putin launched a summer offensive that was supposed to deliver victory to Russia. Instead, that offensive became Putin's summer of defeat, as Russia lost 210,000 soldiers for zero gains. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to the Military Show for more coverage of the brilliant tactics Ukraine is using to overcome Russia's invasion.